So thank you very much for joining us. I'm Charlotte and I have Vicky with me. Vicky is ward manager at the CRF, and thank you very much for joining us, Vicky.
You're very welcome.
First off, I think it's just really useful for people to know what your role involves, really.
So the way we run our research studies here, we have a number of teams who recruit patients onto studies. They find suitable patients according to the requirements of each clinical trial, and the patients pass through various processes in clinics, being screened, being checked to see that they're eligible for the studies, and when they finally get to the point where they're ready to start treatment, that's when they come to my team. So we have a unit full of specialist nurses who are all trained to deliver experimental treatments. So we do nothing other than clinical trials. We look after patients who have everything from oral medications through to really intense first-in-human intravenous therapies. We have an outpatient service where we can see patients as day cases, and we also have an overnight facility, so we run as a hybrid unit, and we provide all the standard nursing care alongside the specialised research nursing care that patients require.
It's a lot.
Yes,
it really is a lot. How do you manage having to do so much and so much variety and such a wide skill range that you must need?
So a lot of it comes down to training, and a lot of it comes down to the way we manage our staff-patient ratios. So we are deliberately staffed very differently from an ordinary NHS hospital ward. We manage the number of patients that our staff would look after at any one time. The two key things for us on the unit are patient safety, obviously, particularly when you're talking about experimental medicines. We need to be aware that we may be dealing with unknown side effects. But also data quality, because our patients are with us not only to have their own treatment, but they're also, we have to remember, contributing to wider research studies. And it's part of our duty of care to ensure that the data we collect can then contribute to those studies. So we have lots of training for our staff. We make sure our staff are only looking after a smaller number of patients so they can really focus on what needs to happen. And we find that really increases staff enjoyment as well, because you get to spend a lot of time with your patients. We get to know our patients really well. They often come back on a weekly basis, which is more regularly than you would perhaps do for NHS treatment. And we get to build really nice relationships with them, and have a really lovely atmosphere in which we work.
How rewarding is it as a role?
Oh wow, very rewarding. So for me, I always knew I wanted to work in clinical research. That was where I wanted to end up as a nurse. I think if you talk to people about why they go into nursing, you will often get feedback around having awareness of the immediacy of that impact that you can have on someone. So everything from making someone a cup of tea to having a sympathetic conversation to delivering a really complex drug regime, you can see the impact you're having on that patient. You get all of that in research, but you get all of that plus the concept that you're also contributing to scientific advances that mean that future patients are also going to get good treatment. So it's the whole package, really. It's the involvement of nurses in treating patients in front of them, treating patients in the future, and being involved in that scientific element. It ticks all the boxes for me.
I can see the smile on your face. It just shows me everything you know I need to know about why you're in it. Nursing is seen by some people as that more caring sort of professional side of things. Is that something that's important to you when you've got patients coming in on trials? Because there's different levels of there'd be so many unknowns involved in it that there is that level of worry and nervousness. Yeah. So is that where the nursing side comes out a lot more, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. So nurses are by training, by nature, usually compassionate, empathetic, and more these days we're also highly skilled, academically trained. We have a lot of experience and a lot of understanding, which if you go back 30, 40 years in the nursing profession, there wasn't as much emphasis on that. That all comes together within research. In order to give our patients confidence in the treatment they're having, we need to be competent professionals. We need to understand the research that we're part of delivering, and we need to be able to answer their questions. But we also need to be human beings, have compassion, have empathy. A lot of patients who come to us on research studies, they may not be in a typical position. You know, if you compared them with an NHS patient, they may have already experienced multiple types of cancer treatment. So they might have the emotional burden that comes with that. They may have particular concerns or worries. they may be concerned about the next steps after trial. So you do have to be mindful of that element alongside being mindful of the science and all the kind of wonderful research element that goes with it.
You mentioned a lot about the training that's involved.
Yes.
And how important and how key that is. How do you make sure everyone stays on top of that training?
Oh wow, that's a daily struggle. It's collaborative really. It's a combination of all nurses across all types of nursing will take responsibility for their own training, but we have a particular emphasis on it in research, and because we are staffed differently, we also have the advantage of being able to release staff more often for training than perhaps you may be able to do on a busy acute ward. So really it's about making the training a priority. It's identifying which areas we need to have particular skills in and making sure that we have a regular sort of monitoring process to ensure we've got the nurses who have those skills. So we have various committees and things that we meet to talk about how, training needs to be developed. We're very lucky we have a practice education facilitator who works within the department to help us make sure that both the practical and the more theoretical skills are kept up to date and that everyone's got the opportunity to practice as they need to.
I know there's no such thing as normal. There absolutely isn't. I don't even know if there's such thing as typical anymore either. But what does a normal, typical day or week look like for you on the ward?
So for the unit as a whole, that's probably more interesting than telling you about my managerial week, but for the unit as a whole, when we start off on a Monday, we don't at the moment have inpatients who've stayed overnight. At the moment we're open overnight Monday to Friday, although thankfully we're able to offer an increasing number of clinical trials and an increasing number of patients are being recruited, so we're hopeful we're going to get to the stage very soon where we will be open over weekends and 24/7. So on a Monday morning we get the unit set up for the week. We have our schedule of patients who are due to come in. We do all of our safety checks, everything that needs to happen from that angle, and then we get prepared for our patients to come in. And as our patients come through clinics, as they're seen by our colleagues in the research teams, as their bloods are taken, results come back, the go-ahead is given for their treatment to be given on that day. And then really we take over from that point. It's a very nurse-led service, so we liaise with pharmacy to obtain the treatments. We take a handover from our research colleagues, so we find out anything that we need to know in particular about that visit, whether that be specific research assessments that need to take place that day, or whether there's anything particular we need to be aware of for that patient. Have they just received some scan results? Is there anything going on with their family that we need to be aware of? And again, that's the lovely thing about the way the service runs, because we're able to be a little bit more personalised. So quite often a colleague may come to us and say, well, actually this patient's had a difficult week for XYZ reason. So our shift coordinator can look at the accommodation we've got available and perhaps offer that patient a single room on that day, or move things around slightly so they can have a little bit more privacy. We provide lunch on the unit, so patients who are with us over lunchtime, we make sure everyone's fed and watered. We have a wonderful housekeeper, Raymond, who is a bit of a feeder. He likes to make sure everybody gets a good lunch. And we're open, right the way through then overnight on the Monday. We would probably have some trial patients staying with us, either because they need to be closely monitored, because it may be the first time they've had a drug, or because there are particular trial assessments that are required at particular time points. Research is very regimented, as you can imagine. If you're conducting a worldwide study, you need that data to be comparable. So we need to be very precise about the time points that we take our samples, that we perform our assessments. That's our main focus.
How long do people typically stay on the unit for?
Patients?
Yeah.
Huge variation.
Yeah.
So in terms of individual visits, we have everything from patients popping up for a quick blood test through to patients who will stay for 7 to 10 days, and everything in between. And in terms of length of time on study, it's a really wonderful thing actually that's growing and growing as time goes on. So I recently said goodbye to a patient who I started working with over 5 years ago.
Wow.
Started him on his first clinical trial, and he had been treated all the way through those past 5 years and actually got to ring the bell and go home because there's nothing there now. His cancer's so much in remission that there's nothing left to treat. And it's those kind of successes that really make you feel like that's why you come to work. Yeah. You've made a real impact on that person.
I was going to ask you how you know you've had a good day, but I think you've just answered that question quite nicely for me.
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination. So for me, one of the nice things about my role now is that I get to do some teaching. So I really love passing my knowledge and experience on to our newer staff. So spending time on the unit working clinically, as well as doing the sort of more administrative managerial side. That's really important, the clinical leadership. So it's that combination of having that direct impact on patients, but also seeing our new nurses come through, inspiring their passion for research and seeing them get excited in the same way that I do is wonderful.
And you know that the future's going to be there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see it taking shape before our eyes.
Quite often there are some myths surrounding clinical research and clinical trials.
Yeah.
What is the one that keeps repeating itself to you day in, day out?
Oh gosh, which one should I pick? I think the one that it would be important to sort of debunk now, given the shape of clinical research at the moment. It used to very much be that clinical trials were seen as the last chance saloon. It was seen as the point of treatment where a patient had no other options left, and this was what they had to do. They had to submit for an experimental trial. It's absolutely not the case anymore. The shape of drug development has changed so rapidly over the last 10 years. We've got so many more targeted therapies. We've got so many more really good options for patients, which even in the early phases of drug development are showing really good efficacy and actually showing benefit for patients. And more we're seeing patients where the clinical trial is the second or possibly even first line option for treatment for them. And whilst the focus of the trial is obviously the trial and the testing of the drug, the fact that that then provides the treatment option for the patient is just amazing. So I think it's taking some of that fear away from the concept of clinical trial and making sure that when clinicians discuss it with patients as an option, they don't feel, well, am I being offered this because there's nothing else? No, you're genuinely being offered this because it's potentially a really good option for you. And that's just fantastic to see.
Feels like a message that we need to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And how do you make sure when patients come on to the unit, how do you make sure they're reassured and how do you make sure that they're comfortable doing what they're doing?
I think it comes down to the basics, really. It's the basics of a friendly face, a welcoming smile. We try and provide a light atmosphere. People often say to me just about working in a cancer hospital, do you not find that really depressing? No, actually, I don't. It's a place of great joy. The job satisfaction in giving people a good experience is fantastic, and certainly in the clinical trial context, it's not all bad news, and we all love what we do. So I think it's about putting people at ease. It's about demonstrating a calm manner, but a confidence and a competence that gives them confidence in what we're doing. Being able to answer questions, but also being honest about the limitations of our knowledge. We run a lot of trials. I would not claim to be an expert in many, if any of them, but I would always be able to refer someone on to the right person to ask a question of. So it's that friendly attitude, it's, the traditional British offer of a cup of tea, and it's talking with patients and making them feel included in the process and that they're real partners in their own care and they're not just people to whom something is being done. The phrase guinea pigs is not allowed. Patients sometimes talk about themselves in that way and I say, no, you're not, you're pioneers. You're stretching the boundaries of medicine and you're helping us find new treatments and you're partners in this process. This isn't something we're doing to you. And all of that helps to make them feel comfortable and happy.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Vicky. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been really good for me to hear and understand a little bit more about what it is you do. So thank you very much for your time.
That's a pleasure.
Thank you.